The man in the rescue market bought back an antique table. When cleaning, he found a switch. Gently pressed. The man carefully opened the case. He took out a new piece of paper and opened it to see that it was more than 100 years ago, but what he didn't know was that 100 years ago at this time, a woman took out a drawer and reached in and fired a gun. The same case brother talked about. The woman surprised to find that his diary has disappeared. What makes him even more unexpected is that 100 years later Carl is holding his diary. Millet wrote on it that the couple will soon marry him to a stranger. It was unfortunate that he had to obey, because in those days a woman could not choose her lover and there was nothing Carl could do about it. He followed the address in his diary and there was a stately house where the black nanny didn't seem to welcome him. Harga this matter told the mother. Mother seems to be very interested. Gullible to the small American reply. Also took out the stamps of the year. He told Carl the address of the post office he had built until his mother had made a joke and the user agreed to it. But Carl lost sleep that night until 2 o'clock. He still couldn't sleep. A voice seemed to be calling to him and he got up, saw the antique table and took out his pen and began to write. I just read your journal and I'm sorry for what happened to you, and maybe I'm the person in your dream, and signed a friend. He collected the letter and rode to the post office. His mother had said was empty because of its age. Al went straight to the pail and slipped the new one in. 100 years ago the postman delivered some letters. Carl's letter is there when Amy gets home and her mother gives her a letter, but she is very unhappy because her father has just forced her to meet her future husband. Let the old sea father's determination let him almost collapse. After he read the letter, Carl was watching a basketball game when he noticed something strange. It was the antique table that opened the secret compartment, and Carl was shocked to see that a letter had appeared out of thin air inside. Coloriu. His science did not represent the commodity of me secret place it always do. And so the two worlds began to exchange letters, and Carl introduced him to the beauty of contemporary society and told him about his father's rigid doctrines. Every day two people are looking forward to each other's letter. Carl came to Millet home again in his repeated explanation of black nanny to let him in. The place was old and shabby, but just as Carl was coming down the stairs, the Millet on the other side was coming up the stairs when a strange thing happened. They both seem to feel each other's presence, and he puts his hand on his chest and he gently touches each other's cheek. At this moment you finally have me and I finally have your man took out Angelis letters, and it was at this moment that Beauty suddenly found that she had hidden Angelis letters. In this way, the two space-time people have a subtle connection and they share their love and life through time and space. The spark of love has already been growing in their hearts. Xiao Mei invited the photographer to paint delicate makeup and then a beautiful photo was completed. Looking at the photo, Carl gradually lost. Little Beauty liked to write poetry, but his contributions were all rejected. Carl will be small Beauty view to the editor to listen to, hope he can help publish it, but was ridiculed by the other party. Don't sell out, get killed around here. Carl got into a big fight with his editor and even his colleagues thought he was crazy, and he wrote to Mei telling him not to give up writing, and encouraged him to marry the person he loved the most. Carl took a picture of himself and mailed it along with the letter, which was left on the ground. This did not receive a letter from Carl. He was very angry and decided to go to the surrounding city for a break before leaving. Small Beauty will experience all this to tell her sister. At this time, Carl is participating in a bicycle downhill race, and suddenly he falls hard on the ground, and there is a shake on the side of Mei. He seems to sense something. Carl was fine in the hospital, but he was in a coma, and maybe his soul had traveled back 100 years when Mei met a man. At first glance he had a strange feeling for him, and the colonel also looked at him from time to time after he came out, and he did not leave, but on the side quietly waiting for something. When Small Beauty passed, he quickly came out to create a chance encounter, and soon two people began dating. Small Beauty not only did not feel sorry for Carl but felt closer and closer to Carl. It seemed to him that it was all destined to happen when they fell in love and the Civil War broke out. When the colonel had to go to the front, they met in the park and their love for each other grew. In this way, they are no less stable together at this time. Carl is also in a coma to wake up the first time he opens the secret compartment to see that it is filled with Mei's letters. When he learned that the colonel was going to fight in the Civil War, he quickly went through the files, and the colonel's name was on the list of the dead and the time of death was July 3rd. Now there are less than 5 days left. He wanted to write to Xiaomin to avoid the tragedy, but at this time, the post office suddenly broke out in a fire. It seems that God is preventing him. This man is crazy.
In order to give the first letter to the woman 100 years ago, he broke into the burning post office despite the stop of the fire uncle. At this time inside a fire, Carl risked his life to put the letter in. 100 years ago, Millet received the letter sent by Carl. Knowing that the colonel was about to die, he drove to the station despite his father's wishes while everyone else was away. But the small beauty is still rushed to the front line. Conductor are men. After getting off, there is no driver willing to go to the front line. He can only do all. It's a fat driver reluctantly agreed. The colonel had been shot in the chest in an accident during the war, and when Millet arrived it was devastated, and a soldier told him that almost all of the colonel's unit had been killed. On the top of the floor is the body, and May wishes there was no colonel among them, but he soon finds the colonel, who is now dying. Under the affectionate confession of small beauty, Colonel left. At this time Carl suddenly woke up as if the lost soul finally returned to his body. It was like a long dream, and the little beauty's heart was sealed and he could not return. The post office had been destroyed. Millet in despair when the use of people brought a letter is the last fell on the ground at Millet after seeing some disappointment. But when he saw Carl's picture of May and her failure, it seemed like it was all meant to be. But when Carl saw the picture of May and the colonel, he couldn't believe it anymore. The two are so much alike, and Carl comes to May's house again, and he goes to the dressing table and he raises his hands and seems to feel each other again. At this time, the servant brings a box that was found in the attic a few days ago. It is the remains of Small Beauty. Small Beauty finally became a teacher. His last name hasn't changed since the beginning, which means he's never joined me and can listen to me. Hal gently touched May's gravestone and placed his favorite lavender on it to put an end to the relationship. But Carl will remember for the rest of his life that's when a chicken feather was laid on Carl, and that's when the movie ended. I believe that love can make people cross time and space, and nothing can prevent the occurrence of love. Two people in love are destined to be together in the past life, right? Look at the guy next to you who may have been a couple in a past life, but you drank Menpo soup by a broken bridge. But go to Menpo Tang. How can it be rare to know the people who are destined to be together? So cherish the sight of him. Finished. Here is for better life. Subscribe to us for more. Thank you.